Hello, everyone, and welcome to the ARDC Skills Forum on coaching researchers outside the comfort zone. My name is Liz Stokes, and I will be your friendly host today. And I would like to first acknowledge the traditional custodians on the land on which I'm meeting you today, which is the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I pay my respects to elders past and present, and particularly welcome any First Nations people and Indigenous people who are here with us today. I would also like to welcome our excellent panel. And while I do that, I'm going to show you my concentrating opening up a slide share face while I do that. Desktop 2 and walk you through that. Great. Okay. If you would like to share where you're located or share the traditional owners of the land on which you are joining us from, please do that in the chat. It's a really great way to break the ice, quietly, unless perhaps you're a noisy typer, yeah, start to generate an understanding of who is joining us today. I will have a closer look at the participant list once I've finished my introductory spiel. So today's topic is coaching researchers outside the comfort zone. And we have the excellent Rowland Mosbergen from the Walter and Eliza Hall Institute with us, and the equally excellent Jianzhou, who is an eResearch analyst from Intersect and works at the University of Technology, Sydney. I have to make an apology that we did have Louise Ord from CSIRO on our list, but unfortunately she is unwell. So, and I have been unable to replace her. So I am going to apologize for our part manual and acknowledge that these are things that are in process. I wish we could do better, and it shouldn't just be down to Louise to save us from that. So if you ever feel like we don't have enough diversity on our panels, I encourage you to call us up and tell us about it, because I think then we can work on that and meet that challenge together. So the purpose of these skills forums is to keep trainers who are responsible for teaching the pointy end of data-intensive research to researchers in touch with one another between our annual skill summits, and to host an open assembly of skills practitioners having a public conversation. During this next hour, I hope that we can facilitate knowledge exchange, showcase digital research skills development, and also share resources and best practice. So while I'm having an excellent chinwag with Rowland and Jianzhou, I really encourage you to be profligate in the chat. I'll have to find out if that's actually a word I can use in this context, and share your own experiences and recommendations for resources, because I know you have them. So, coaching researchers outside the comfort zone. Why the hell did I choose this topic? Well, I wanted to talk about, as when I'm thinking about training and all the extra things that happen outside of the training workshop, if we sort of use that as our kind of source of truth, or like sense of what training is in its kernel. And what are the things that we find ourselves doing as trainers to support our researchers learning, developing the confidence to practice, and actually changing their behavior. So this conversation, I'm hoping to pull out some of those specific skills about that help researchers, bridge that divide between attending a workshop and changing their research practice. I think personally that if you can draw on coaching techniques, you have a bigger skill set to help learners push through that uncertainty and apply new methods in their own projects. And that means that we can build capability that lasts like beyond that workshop classroom. So the main kind of questions I'd like you to be thinking about and sharing your perspectives on in the chat and in our sort of Q&A session in the second half are thinking about that line between instruction and coaching. Like where does instruction stop? Where does coaching begin? Why does mindset over mastery benefit researchers? What part of coaching is actually really useful for our researcher learners? And then finally, let's turn the lens of analysis upon ourselves and think about how we can build our own coaching capacity as trainers. So there we go. Oh, we're not up to the feedback yet. Oh, great. That means I can stop sharing slides. And now you can just now you get to listen to my talking head. I hope this is entertaining. So I'm going to, are there any questions that I need to attend to in the chat right now?
No questions so far.
Great. Thanks, Ellen. So Rowland, I'm going to start with you. So I invited you onto this session because your volunteer program for master's students at WEHI has demonstrated remarkable success in developing leadership through research software pathways. So I'm interested in how you've built coaching into that program, that internship model, and particularly around ideas around mindset shift and thinking creatively about internships, especially when internships can bring us into the uncomfortable zone of experience as they tend to do. So I'll start off. So I'll ask you to explain a bit about your internship program, and then I'd like you to tell me, how do you encourage self-motivated problem solving rather than getting your interns to wait until they have complete understanding of a topic before going through?
Thanks, Liz. Thanks for having me on board. So to give you a bit of a background, I've had about 300 interns through the program over the last 4 years. Just in this last intake, I had about 41 interns from about 7 countries and 4 continents. It's an international online program, and it's really there to give interns a chance to understand how you go about solving complex problems in a state of uncertainty, pretty much. And it's very different from a typical internship where you have someone telling you what to do. What we do is we give people an idea of, here are some questions to kickstart you off. Understand the high level reason of what we're trying to do here. What's the user want? What's the benefit? And then what's the architecture? What are the technologies that you need? How do they all fit together? And then start to dive into the technical. And what I've seen is that for the majority of the interns, maybe about 75% of them, they're very used to being told what to do, and they can just focus on the technical problem without any context whatsoever. But what I find is that when I talk to people who are hiring graduates, they want people who can actually solve a problem. So not just the technical ones, but actually be able to explain to them what the problem is and have them come back with some ideas so that they can be more independent. And for me, I think that's what makes the difference between a a good software engineer and an average software engineer. And I think what makes a research software engineer very valuable in research. They have the ability to come into a new situation, understand where things are coming from, and then be able to fit their technical skills in to help move the project forward. So in terms of changing the mindset, it's very, very difficult. I remember one intern where I was explaining to them, hey, you need to start from the high level. And I even gave them a question to ask me, and they couldn't. They literally could not change their emotional state to ask me the question that I put into the chat, because there was this barrier in their minds that they needed to be able to research the answer and then come back. Doing that is very, very inefficient, right? And not only that, in a really complex project, there is no answer on the internet. They're so used to having small university projects that have very, very well-defined boundaries. When they come across something that's so big and undefined, they can really struggle. So I basically give them the space and the time and the opportunity to work through that, hit their head against a wall in a safe environment, and then go, but I can't do it. And then maybe I'll say, well, remember when I said this? Might be a way of doing it. And so sometimes I see people turn around in week 8, week 10, and go on to do really, really productive work once the light bulb starts to click.
Right. I like that. I provision safe wall hitting spaces for people.
Yes, it's definitely not a wall. It's sort of like a nice safe mat.
Yeah, okay. So I mean, a beautiful chaise longue, right? That's, propped against a wall, and secured, made secured as well. It's not going to fall down again. That's really interesting. I want to pick up on something you said about noticing that conflict between an intern's idea of doing their job or I just want to focus on my job, and then the emerging needs that you said that are coming from employers that, no, we don't actually need people to simply do their job. We actually need them to be willing to solve problems. So, yeah, let me think. Can you go back then to that kind of safe wall hitting space about that student, when you mentioned that kind of that emotional state barrier about being unable to kind of answer that. So we've got this kind of fixed mindset sort of challenge. I mean, if that happened again, would you approach that situation differently, or?
No, not really, because it was like, okay, that's okay. You don't have to answer me that question.
Mm.
Maybe you might want to ask me that through the email, or we can come back to this a little bit later. Because again, it's a lot of the young, the volunteers that come through there, we don't know what's going on in their lives. We're just sort of saying, hey, this might be the easiest approach, and we give them the opportunity to try. So some interns won't pick that up, and some interns pick it up really well because they have what I would call really good continuous improvement skills. So tolerance for complexity, a tolerance for ambiguity, critical thinking, learnability, adaptability, and being collaborative by default. But some don't have that. And so even getting them to understand that this could be useful and that they could collaborate with people who do have that skill, it's about building these multidisciplinary teams, right? And appreciating that when in a complex project, you can't know everything, right? When you're working with someone who's 20 years of experience doing biology, and another person who has 10 years of work doing single cell, RNA-seq, you can't sit in there and in, 40 minutes of Googling become an expert and know everything that they know. And interns haven't really found that out in most cases. And so recognizing that you can still contribute even if you don't really know what's going on, but you find enough to be able to help, is actually a skill that needs to be learned. and the opportunity to do so as well.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Thank you. You know, I realized as you answered that there was part of my own kind of yearning to, determine the best way to teach teach learners how to learn, right? Or like I think I implied that there might be a perfect way to handle such a question or how to handle, emotional barriers. But actually, what you're telling me is that it was important for that student to come face to face with that failure, that sense of failure, and know that that is equally as valid as having an answer for your question.
Actually, Liz, it actually
Yeah.
reminds me of a story I heard from someone um, that someone hired a Master of Data Science student for their first role, and they found this student very disconsolate, very sad, and they said, "Well, what's wrong?" Maybe this was a month that they come in. They go, "Oh, I got my results back," and she went and she looked at the results, and she goes, "Hey, this looks pretty good." And then the student was like, "Really? But it's not a perfect line like I have in my university course." Right?
Yeah.
What are we really teaching them when we're saying that this is what a result looks like? We're actually teaching them something else to make sure that they use the right methodology, but it's not a real world example. And I think that's one of the challenges. That's one of the things that I have to get them to unlearn.
Yeah. Perfectionism. It's the police in our brain all the time. Thanks, Roland. Okay, I'm going to move over to Jianzhou um, and bring in, so use this where we've got to as a segue to talk about cultures of training, because Jianzhou, your work with Intersect, I think, brings a unique perspective on how organizational culture can shape trainer practice and also coaching practice, or how we appreciate these kind of coaching skills, particularly with a trainer cohort that also includes practicing data scientists and active PhD students. I remember hearing about that last year at our Skills Summit in Brisbane. So what I would like to ask you as a kind of introductory uh, question, as you sort of talk a bit about Intersect, can you share some successful models of coaching for trainers, and what kind of things or what kind of coaching skills do you think make some trainers particularly effective at doing that?
Yeah, thanks, Liz. Thanks, Liz, for having me. Yeah, great discussion, by the way, with Roland. Thing I actually want to share here is sort of pretty in common with what Roland said. Yeah, because with at Intersect, in our training, we normally have a junior trainer shadow a very experienced trainer or DRA, myself, digital research analyst. So we give those new trainers or junior trainer opportunity to learn the actual software skills, software mechanics from them. And this is, I think, it's a great opportunity for them to learn the successful models and the very effective coaching capabilities from experienced trainers. So a couple of things here I want to share. One very effective coaching strategy is knowing when to slow down, right? Slow down, and it's often better than just powering through the course material. And it's very important to stay in sync with the trainees, with the learners, and maintain a very appropriate pace throughout the coach training session. Another really effective coaching capability is that a good coach would normally learn how to adjust an example, an exercise, making this challenging at the same time is doable. Because some of the course are based on the software carpentry, using software carpentry material, and we are tailoring the material, we're tailoring the exercise. So a good coach normally set the goal is for the group to walk away feeling capable of solving those solving those problems, but at the same time they're not feeling too overwhelmed. Yeah, and just another thing that's second what Rowland said, we create a space and be open for them to make mistakes. Yeah, and encourage them to stay active, being friendly in the chat. A good coach normally don't feel don't mind getting interrupted, and because they see the question, they see the interaction, a good sign of the group that they are fully engaged. Yeah, and lastly, I think a good coaching normally we use that as a way of modeling self-learning, and I think that's from a trainee, from a learner's perspective, they love to see, or they love to hear a trainer say, okay, I don't know the answer for this question. Let's check together. Let's look at the documentation. Let's ask Google. Let's ask AI. Yeah, so and we're just teaching them the way of solving the problem rather than just giving them the straight answer, the direct answer. So yeah, so
It's really interesting, Jianzhou, because I mean, Rowland mentioned not having sometimes there isn't actually an answer, but I think you're talking, so it's not really about it's a so you are talking about simply because there may not be an answer doesn't mean you can't cultivate the curiosity or the attitude to go looking for an answer or to, you know, perhaps work with others, yeah, to get there. So it's always been something interesting to me, that idea that not being an expert is actually really helpful, is more helpful for learning something new than than actually being an expert. Could you unpack that a bit more for us? Like how does that help, or how does what does that look like when an Intersect trainer does that?
yeah, I mean and that's really it's a hard thing to do as a coach, because educating people how to solve the problem rather than giving direct answer in the chat, because we need to take care of a couple of things in the online training setup. Beware of the time, beware of the pace, not giving too much information outside the training scope. Yeah, and to be honest, a good coach normally pretend to not knowing the answer, and just as a way of stimulate the interaction, right? Because interaction is normally really hard in the online setup. And another thing I want to share is real coaching isn't just about dumping the information, dumping the material. We're trying to get learners excited about trying different things and giving them permissions to break things, to make mistakes, and you know, encourage the whole group working on the same problem and have them fix the issue together.
Ooh, Rowland, what are your perspectives? I like your question in the chat about does that mean a trainer has to be able to read people? How do you know you're reading learners or reading your reading your interns because they're online, your program's online. How do you manage that?
I was actually wanted to push the question back to Jianzhou actually around you know, when you're hiring your junior digital researcher analyst, does that factor into your selection criteria? Do we take
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, yes. It's a key criteria that we are seeking, a key capability we're seeking from our junior trainer cohort. We're not just hiring people who are knows everything, or just simply demonstrating the material. We would like to see a little bit about effective coaching from their from them. So that's what we are looking for.
Thanks.
Yeah, good answer. Okay, I'm going to go back to that question around where does instruction stop and coaching begin? Jianzhou, I'll start off with you and then ask Rowland for your perspective on this. When do researchers need more than the demonstration, right? Because I mean it's nice to kind of show that you're a relatable trainer and that you can sort of handle not knowing the answer as much as perhaps your trainer audience, your trainee audience. But how do you sort of balance that? Why would you even need coaching or beyond the workshop, the delivery of workshops?
Yeah, good question. So demonstrating, as I mentioned, demonstration is fine for teaching them the basics, teaching them just how to do coding in Python, in R. But usually it doesn't work well if the researcher are trying things on their own messy data, on their own project. And that's when they need more than just demonstration. They need some post-training support for post-training one-on-one sessions, right? So yeah, in the training, we also separate demonstration and coaching. As I said, we have junior trainers there, we have casual trainers there, we have DRA or more experienced trainer there, where a casual trainer sort of manage the instruction bit, demonstrate. They demonstrate, they instruct, they troubleshoot, they guide people over on the basics, where the DRA, digital research analyst, help them or step into the coaching bit. So we provide the mentorship and also emotional support. I think that's an important thing. And also in terms of helping them developing some real skills, especially the productive experimental skills when they do their own work, their own research. We do this through a couple of post-training support sessions. One is so-called, we have happy hour, we have so-called drop-in sessions at UTS. So we are hosting this together with the UTS eResearch team. So these are the very informal community-driven meetups. We do this every fortnight, every 2 weeks, and all researchers are encouraged to bring their questions, their own data, and we walk through the data in this drop-in session. It's a good way of coaching, in my point of view. And we also do tailored one-on-one support, while training, as I said, covers basics, bring them on board to the coding field. All right. But the one-on-one session is more discipline specific. So we can sit down with the researcher, just helping them translate what they learn into a more specific research research data flow. So, yeah.
And just to touch on what Jianzhou was saying, I really like this idea of having this multiplicity of support,
Yeah.
especially when, and Jen's question, which is a really great question, is like, how can you cultivate the environment where it's safe to make mistakes and run into walls in a single day workshop? Sometimes what I found is that people will ask more questions when I'm not there. So actually, when I had a previous intern come along, and then I removed myself from the room, when I came back, I found out they asked way more questions. Because sometimes people are coming from a culture, some people might have a natural tendency to see it as an authoritarian figure that needs to be, it's just a different sort of relationship, and you need to be able to break that down. And also with the one-on-one that you were mentioning, Jianzhou, having one-on-one meetings can make it a bit easy because you're not if you make a mistake, you're not in front of your peers. So you're just trying to create different, when you talk about neurodiversity, everyone's very, very different in the way that they feel safe. And so having those multiplicity of supports is actually really, really great. And it's really great for community building too, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
100%.
Great points, Rowland. Thanks. And thanks for picking up Jen's question too about cultivating that environment and how I'm interested in the interns turning a corner weeks into the program. Can you speak a little bit more about that, Rowland?
When you mentioned before the instruction versus the coaching, at the start I've got a whole bunch of slides, and I can show you a few of them just to give you an idea really quickly.
Oh yeah.
These are the slides that I'm sort of showing at the start. Hang on, I always forget to press share. Here we go. So what I'd tell people is that the majority of interns that come through, they have this kind of mindset. They skip the high level client needs. They kind of skip the technical architecture. That's a tendency that they tend to have. This is the way that the majority of them are taught. This is where they pick up, and then they focus on diving into the technical side. But actually, to solve a problem, and I've seen people who've done this part start working on a code base that's obsolete. We don't use it anymore because they didn't actually understand how everything fit together. So by understanding the high level client needs and this, you make less missteps. Or if you're this kind of person, you need to team up with this kind of person to be able to jump in and they can guide you through that. But because I don't want to be this person for the interns, I want them to move from this profile to this profile. That's what I'm sort of looking for. And so you just need to give it some patience, and you show these kind of things, you show this sort of, people who ask more questions are more likely to be able to get further more quickly. So I show them this one so that like interns don't want to ask questions because they don't want to look like they're wrong. And then when they start doing things, that's when they realize that they've made a mistake. And that's what usually happens. They're in week 8 and they've realized they just keep hitting these walls, and they realize they have to do it a different way because the way they did it in university is just not the way to do things. And so being able to build documentation that allows them to go from the green, the high level, down to the yellow really quickly is something that we've been working on. Getting the interns to think about the next set of interns coming through. And the best way I could think about it was these cutout drawings where the outline of the plane is your high level client needs. The cutaway is like the internal, how does everything fit together at the architecture level? And all these things you can't read are like numbers and details of what each number is. And that's kind of like the details that you can jump into once you understand where you're working on it. Because if you're supposed to be working on an engine and you end up working on the tail, then all the work you're doing isn't going to work because you're just working on the wrong part. So these are just some things that we use to give them the instruction at the start. But they may not understand it until they run into it in person.
Yeah.
So then all I do is just go back to the original diagrams and say, hey, remember this? This is what's actually happening to you right now. And then you go through from there.
Yeah. I love that you brought in planes. That reminds me that we haven't had a conversation about aerospace engineering. But I know, and yet I recently discovered that one of our HPCU professionals at specialists at UTS is an aerospace engineer, which is wonderful as well. But that's off topic. Coming back onto topic, that idea about also being explicit about what you're learning, or teaching your learners to, or teaching that idea of metacognition to your learners, I think is something interesting. I don't want to go deep in, I would love to go deep into pedagogical discussion right now, but let's try and keep it practical and salient. So by which I mean that shared language that you develop between learners and trainers about how to talk about problems. Like, how do you, Jen, I mean, I think sometimes this comes back to your question. How do you kind of make it okay to say, oh no, sorry everyone, I'm down, I'm stuck on the tail. I really have to finish this tail, but I know I said at the start I was going to work on the left jet engine. Can someone help me or volunteer to take the jet engine up? Yeah, this might be a useful moment to open up or open up questions or even responses to that shared language idea. I'll go to Rowland and Jianzhou, and then if you would like, as our audience member, please turn your camera on, raise your hand, so we can bring you into the conversation too.
Just touching on Adeline's point about abstract is made more concrete, I think that's the really big challenge when we're doing one day, like, talking about Jen's 1 day conference, 1 day workshop. It can be really challenging for a PhD candidate who's been given a task to go, okay, how do I solve this? Because, there might only be like 500 people on the planet who can solve that problem. And, you have to deconstruct what you need to be able to say, well, abstractly, this is how you learn Python, but for your specific example, there's a few steps along the way that you need to be able to do that. And this is where I started talking. I haven't done it really properly yet, but I've tested it out a few different times, is creating an individual learning plan, or asking interns to create their own individual learning plans. And when I think we do this naturally, and Jianzhou, please, I'd love to hear your point on this. When someone comes to us with a problem, the first thing they're saying is, well, which part of the plane are you working on? Can you tell me about the plane? Is it a big plane? Is it a small plane? Is it right? Because you need context to be able to do that. And then you're starting to break down, okay, you really want to do this part of the plane, right? Well, do you know about, thermodynamics? It's the engine. So do you know how big? You're starting to break it down. And what I'd like to do with, if we ever do this idea of a national hacky hour, is to have an individual learning plan where people can write that in. So it's not just verbal. You get them to write it somewhere that they can easily move around, so that when they go back to, say, someone in their team, they can sort of say, here's the language that I'm using, and make it easier for them to map from talking about Python to map talking about research or something like that. So that the next time they bring around, and let's say they talk to Jianzhou the first time, but they talk to a junior RDA the second time, you can almost see what they know. Because sometimes it's really difficult if you've ever been tech support and you're talking to someone and you're saying, okay, I want you to do this, and you have to explain it to them as if they don't know. And then the person on the other line goes, hey man, I've been doing tech support for 5 years. I know what's going on. You don't need to talk to me like that. And you're like, but I didn't know where your skill set was. But having an individual learning plan, quick read through that, you've got a better feel of how you can pitch to them, so to speak. So just some ideas.
Oh, yeah, nice. Great. Thanks, Adeline, for your comment too. All right. Who would like to join our discussion? Do you have a question you would like to ask or put to our speakers? In the meantime, I will, while everyone is clearly thinking hard about that, Thank you, Min, for putting the UDL guidelines into the chat there, the Universal Design for Learning framework, which I agree is really useful. In fact, I've got a little A4 printout of those on my desk. Okay, Paulus, welcome.
Hey, thank you. I'm from CSIRO actually. I'm very interested actually in probably a tiny bit of topic. How do you convince people, researchers to get interested in training in the first place? Because some researchers, I wouldn't say many, but they don't even realize that they need training, at least in certain aspects, but many of them in software engineering aspects. Probably because they sort of know that they know how to code, but this knowledge comes from when they were a student, and things are very different when you are in the production level. So how do you convince them to, I think you need training in the first place without coming across as, rude or things like that? I'll be very interested in your opinion on this. Thanks.
Okay.
That's a tough question, so I think I'll defer to Jianzhou.
Sure. Yeah, happy to share my opinion on this. Yeah, we've been. I had been a researcher myself, and I've been doing training for more than 9 years. Yeah, as you said, Paul, it's always hard to convince researchers, especially senior researchers, to get on training. So I think a good approach, a more effective approach, is promote the training well in a greater community, especially the new HDRs. So we are sharing at UTS. I'm taking care of all the training programs here, from Intersect as well as the internal training. We are targeting. We're sending the message out to all faculty, all schools, especially, and we're also presenting ourselves at the HDR inductions. So I think once you get the message out and the message correct to those new HDR students, they know it's essential for them to train, and also they will help us spread the word out to their supervisors and to their colleagues, and yeah, and with more technology coming online, also especially with the support of AI in play, I think there's more uptake. There should be more uptake in the training by the greater community. Yeah, I think that's any.
That's given me, thanks, Jianzhou, because that gave me time to think. Because this is a tough one, right?
Yeah.
It's not straightforward. I think as you were talking, Jianzhou, you mentioned, like, do they even know it exists? Like the number of times where I've said to someone in a research department, "Hey, you're doing the same thing as blah blah blah," and they go, "Oh, really? Oh, I didn't know that." So there's a lot of, that researchers are there to focus on one thing only, and being very, very good at it. So it can be very challenging for them to notice that there's something that exists outside their focus. So I think the challenge of getting them to even know that these things exist is a challenge in itself. And working a lot with research data management with researchers, where I've walked into organizations where they said we can't get traction with our researchers. And it's because they're coming at it from an institutional lens. They're saying to the researchers, in most cases, what I've seen, we're trying to solve research data management for institutions. So as a researcher, your job is to put more effort in to help us solve our problem, which is never going to fly with researchers. Whereas if you turn it around, and I've done this a few times now, where I say, hey, I'm here to advocate for you. What kind of problems do you have generally, right? And then if someone pops up, I'll try and help them with that. But when research data management pops up, go, well, actually, we want to try and solve this both for the organization and for the researchers. And by providing them with things that will make their life easier or to make them more efficient, that's something that they will listen to. So when you're doing something and then you see them doing it by hand and you go, I'm not really sure, but what if I told you I could save you like about 4 or 5 hours and you'd have less mistakes? Would that be of interest? And then if you have something like Jianzhou has, where you've got different levels of things, being able to work out what they need and then saying to them, because we do this, I think a lot of people do this like informally. Oh, look, you might need to do the basics of Python to do this, but your stuff is so specific, you don't need to book a one-on-one meeting after you've done some of the things there, or you might need to do a one-on-one meeting so we know which skill set you're at, and then we might need to work backwards from that. I feel that that's the best way to go. Just because researchers are busy, researchers are focused, researchers are trying to keep their jobs. And so you need to be able to demonstrate to them very clearly that you'll be able to help them do something faster or more accurately or in a very cool way that they like. So.
Thank you so much for this answer.
And each researcher is different, right?
Yeah, that's true.
So it's got to be, and this is the thing that I want to sort of touch on that I didn't, it's got to be person-centric, right? And those one-on-one things, like not everyone will work well in a workshop, but they might work well in a one-on-one situation or in a smaller group. So, you're just trying to find the best way to line it up, which is why you have that, and I love the little thing, design multiple means of engagement in that UDL thing that Min sent through.
Thank you both. This is very good answers. Thanks.
And well, I guess another side to that is that often I believe that researchers want something to be difficult. And so I'm kind of offering this as they only want specific things to be difficult, right? You kind of want to be able to do it. You want to do some research and enjoy the difficulty of working that out. But then you want to be able to turn around and go, look, oh, wow, that was actually quite complex that I've done. But, you don't want to feel how complex it is really necessarily while you're doing it. Another way of, I guess, thinking about that is, why does this thing have to be so hard? Is another kind of aspect on that. If some of the comments about some researchers might balk at needing a learning plan. So yes, obviously we need to be careful around patronizing or paternalistic approaches. So I think Rowland was really suggesting go faster stripes as a way of, showing efficiencies or speaking to what is valuable there. And sometimes it is actually about things do have to be difficult enough to be valuable. So yeah.
I was just going to say a couple of points. When I'm talking to a researcher, like if I was talking to a life scientist, I would say, hey, you could jot these down in your electronic notebook, right? So I'd say it in their language. So going back to that comment around abstract versus concrete language, right? I'm trying, a lot of the time I see, maybe less so now, let's say, can I say back in the day? Am I old enough to say back in the day? So back in the day, it was like, and I've seen this with other things as well, we're a new project team, we're talking our language, you have to translate, as a researcher, you have to translate into our language to understand what we're trying to do. And what you really need to do is to speak in their language. So if I was talking to someone as a researcher and I was trying to work out what they want to do. I'd say maybe you want to document it. Do you have like an electronic notebook? Do you have a whatever? Do you store it in? Just depending on the language, and I'd want to have a bit of an understanding of some of their lingo before I talk to them, ideally. And then there was a second point there. What I've seen, you were mentioning something, and it was around stakeholder engagement, and I think I might have lost that one. And it was, no, you were saying that researchers would like to have it, sort of difficult, and
Yeah, sometimes things are choosing the right amount of difficulty
I would actually
to
say,
be worthwhile.
in my experience, researchers test people who aren't researchers by asking them questions in a research way to see how deep that person's knowledge is. And they want someone who's helping them to be able to answer their questions to the deepest +1 that they know. Right? So if I'm a researcher and someone's saying to me, oh yeah, we want you to learn Python, I go, okay, so why would I do that? What would it be the benefit? And they say, oh yeah, we could blah, blah, but that wouldn't actually solve my problem, which is this. And they would go, oh yeah, and they start to stumble, then all of a sudden that person has been discredited by the researcher. So you always have to be one step deeper in understanding that you think the researcher is going to go through, otherwise you will lose credibility. So having a superficial sort of, your own terminology will get you caught out a lot, because researchers are very, very specific and they want to be concrete if you talk about that language. So having that, I've seen that a lot, where the researchers go, yeah, there's something, I don't think it's really going to help us, even if it could, because going back to your point, Liz, the language isn't there, but the depth of understanding that the researchers are expecting from the person helping them isn't sufficient enough for them to think that this is worth their while. That's what I found in a few different situations, personally.
This is starting to feel a bit like therapy. Okay, we're 3 minutes away, and I had like 5 really good questions to ask. I'm going to choose a cheeky question because I can, because I've got two men, fine, upstanding members of our trainer community or research community here with me. Can I ask, with only a little bit of my tongue in my cheek, how has your experience of being a parent enabled you to reflect on training, comfort zone, coaching, in or out of the comfort zone? And I ask this as a parent myself, but yeah, can I be cheeky and ask you both this as our wrap-up kind of question?
You want to go first, or
Yeah, right.
I can?
I like you.
Sorry, Rowland.
2 things. I've learned to be a lot more patient, and I've learned that I'm a nature versus nurture kind of parent. So nature means that it doesn't matter what I do, my kids will end up pretty much the same, which is true because they have very, very different personalities. So I have to respect that diversity. Is basically it, and then try and make accommodations for them, going back to that person-centered sort of model. Jianzhou?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have a better understanding of than me, because I'm new parent. My baby's just 18 months, so she's exploring everything. Yeah, be patient. Definitely, it's just a first step. Because my Riley is now learning speak. She just learned how to work. You can't just force her to learn faster than everybody else, right? I know from a parent, we want her to be always good, to perform well, but different kids, different. And speaking, come to the training cohort. Every researcher is different. So patience is a really good coaching. What makes a coach very effective, and also celebrate small achievements. Right? In parenting, every tiny step means a big deal for the baby, and we can do the same thing in the coaching, in the training. Just make researchers feel confident, feel that they are recognized for what they have done, what they have achieved, and also be brave to make mistakes. We don't, of course, we don't judge them on that. It's just one part of a very significant part of training, part of the learning, and we want the researchers feeling the same thing as well. So it's not a sign that they are not good at that, good at coding. It's just a sign that they are challenging themselves. They're practicing.
Great. Yeah, really good answers. And thank you for, indulging me in a slightly cheeky question. It was International Women's Day recently, and I felt I should, try and make amends for our panel. Thank you both. Thank you, Rowland and Jianzhou. That has been a really excellent discussion. I've had a great time thinking about these questions and entertaining comments from our chat panel too. Our next session is going to be navigating AI and research training. So for those of you who had questions around, coaching and AI, I even had those. So, bring them along next time. 21st of April, I believe we've got Min Hyun, Brian Balzen-Stanton, and Weisi Chen, who will be on our panel for a chat then. It's time for me to say thank you, and we have a link somewhere in the chat, I think, about giving us feedback for today's session. So if you would have some thoughts or want to go deeper into some of this stuff, I would love to know. If you're intrigued about the, what is it going to be? Our Go Faster stripes, the W2F happened labels, or what the story, individual learning plan, developing a common trainer language, please, hit us in that survey, and we'll be in touch. So thanks, everyone. Thanks for staying on 2 minutes past the hour. Go and have lunch and a nice time, and we'll see you next month. Bye.